Hello again. In this video, we're going to be talking about if, else if, and else, and we're going to be resolving a problem we have at the moment where the player can simultaneously push up and down and register 2 key presses, or up, down, and enter and register 3. That's not what we want. We want to have that you can only push 1 at a time. So if we have a look at our code as it is at the moment, we've got 3 if statements. And we've talked about the structure of an if being if this particular condition is true, that's why if is a conditional, this is true, then do this particular thing. The moment we're saying if that's true, do this, if that's true, do that, that's true, do that. We don't have a situation, we don't have a structure in here that says if that one's true, well then don't do any of these other things. So let's have a look at our options. We've already talked about if statement. If this expression evaluates to true, then execute all of the statements within this code block. You could have 1, 2, 5, 10 statements within here. Do all of these particular things if this is true. We can also say else if. It's still an if statement, but because it says else, we are only executing this if statement if the preceding if statement evaluated to false. So if something happened up here, then go off and do it and don't even look at this else. But we're saying else is another way of saying like otherwise. If this is true, do that. Otherwise, or else, do this particular if statement. And that again is if some expression is true, then execute the code within this block. And we could have, again, we could have a whole bunch of statements within this code block. We can also have a whole lot of else if. So if thing number 1 is true, do that. If thing number 2, else if thing number 2 is true, do that. Else if thing number 3 is true, do that. Else if, and so on. So we can have a lot of else ifs one after another. And eventually we can get to the point where we could, as a catch-all, we can use else, which is another way of saying if nothing else above has evaluated to true, then just do this. And again, we execute the code in the code block. So let's give a real-world example here. If the condition of being in the mood for an MMO, a massively multiplayer online game. So if I'm in the mood for an MMO, then play World of Warcraft. That's the statements within here. So the condition is if I'm in the mood for MMO, play World of Warcraft. Else if I'm in the mood for an FPS, then play Overwatch. In other words, if I'm not in the mood to play an MMO, then how about playing a first-person shooter? Oh yeah, I'm in the mood for that, then play Overwatch. However, if I'm not in the mood for that, if this evaluates as false, then we can have our catch-all of go to bed, because you know you should. So if I'm not in the mood for that. If you're a visual person, let me just give you this as a flow diagram here. MMO, yeah, why not? That's true, yes. I'm in the mood for an MMO, then I'll play WoW. If it's false, no, I'm not in the mood for an MMO, then I'll consider it a first-person shooter. If I'm in the mood for that, if that evaluates as true, then I'll play Overwatch. If I'm not in the mood for a first-person shooter, then I'll go to bed. So this is the flow. This happens first, that happens second, and then this happens if all of these other conditions have evaluated to false. When we look at our code here, we can see that we need to have some mutually exclusive setup in here that I can do this, and if I'm not presently doing that, then okay, I can do this. And if I'm not presently doing that, I can do this. So that is the structure for our challenge here. It's pretty straightforward if you've understood this concept. And if you've done a bit of programming before, this will be a piece of cake and you know how to do this straight away. And the challenge is to allow only one key option to be pressed down at a time, so the player can only push 1 at a time. So that's our challenge. It's pretty straightforward, just only a couple of keywords that you need to be adding into our existing code. Give that your best shot, and I'll see you back here in a moment where we can go through our solution together. Our solution's pretty straightforward. We need to leave our first if as an if, and then our other 2 if statements, we need to make them else if. So it's saying if you're pushing a key, if you're pushing the up arrow, fantastic, push the up arrow, stop there, nothing else needs to be done, don't go to these other ones. If you're not pushing the up arrow, then yeah, you've got an opportunity to push the down arrow. If you're not pushing the down arrow, else if, we give you the opportunity to push return. So that's a way of us creating this mutually exclusive setup where we can only push 1 at a time. And in this particular case, there's no reason for us to put in an else, because basically we just do nothing if these other conditions aren't met. Let's save that and jump back over into Unity, hit play again, and then do a test. I can push up, I can push down a couple of times. If I push them together, only one's being, you can probably hear me pushing through the keyboard there, only one's being pushed. A little tip here, if you click collapse, then you can see how many times a particular thing's pushed. If I push up, then you should see I need to click back in the game window, just as a note to do that. Push up, you can see the under up arrow going up, 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 and then if I push down, down's going down. If I push 2 at the same time, only one of them went up. If I accidentally kind of push 1, 2, then they both go up. Okay, so we've created mutually exclusive key presses by using the else if conditional statement within here. Well done, great work. I'll see you in the next video.